So let us, in our typical manner, prepare for our Bible study with our opening prayer. God of grace and mercy, we thank you, magnify and glorify you for another opportunity to come together and study your word. Now, God, as we are assembled here in this fashion, we ask that you would come now and send the anointing of your Holy Spirit, that you would watch over us, keep us, guide us, and direct us. Teach us, O God, from your word today, that we might be established in your word. Help us to not only understand it, but to carry it out in our everyday living. Bless our gathering. And then, God, we ask your blessing upon those who are on our prayer list, those who are undergoing procedures today, God. Bless and have your way. And we'll be careful to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Um, as we continue our study in Second Samuel, we are dealing with the conflict between Absalom and David, um, and there's a discussion among the people regarding David's future as the king of Israel. Some some remember the great work and leadership that he has provided. Others are puzzled at the fact that he allowed Absalom to cause him to leave Jerusalem. And as we noted in our study earlier, the reason David left Jerusalem was to prevent the ensuing battle from occurring in Jerusalem. And so David had Abiathar and Zadok uh, speak to the tribe of Judah and ask, why are they the last to bring him back to the throne? We know that David is of the tribe of Judah, and these are his close relatives. And so uh, David said to them, tell the people to make Amasa captain of the army. Now, Joab is the captain of the army. Uh, but we remember that when the young man came to Joab and told him that he saw Absalom stuck in a tree, dangling there, and Joab said, well, why didn't you strike him? And the man told him that he heard the king say in their hearing not to harm Absalom. And then Joab went and killed Absalom. Somehow, David is aware of what happened, and he makes now Amasa his nephew captain of the army in Joab's stead, and that's where we ended our story on last Wednesday. So this morning we pick up with 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 15. And let's read verses 15 through 18. I will be reading from the New King James Version. All right. Then the king returned and came to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjaminite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him. And they went over the Jordan before the king. Then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household to do what he thought good. Now Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. Um, so, having set in motion a desire to know the people's heart, David's return would only be at the will of the people. David is not interested in coming back as the king unless the people really want him. Now, we already know that God has already chosen David, but he also wanted the acceptance of the people. And David left in what they thought was dishonor, but his return will be quite the opposite. David wants to know if the people really want him back. And if they do, then they would honor him by welcoming him back into the city. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 19 through 23. Then he said to the king, "Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king." But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this? Because he cursed the Lord's anointed." And David said, "What have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For I do not know that today I am king. For I do not know that today I am king over Israel." Therefore the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king swore to him. So that name Shimei might be familiar to you. We remember that as David and his men left Jerusalem, Shimei, the son of Gera, he is of the house of Saul, went along throwing rocks, kicking dust, and cursing David, calling him a bloodthirsty man. Now Shimei comes now and falls at the feet of David. He pleaded with David that he would not hold his prior actions against him. And Shimei states that just as he was first among the people to disavow David, he is first among the people to welcome him back as king. Now Abishai, Joab's brother and the son of Zeruiah, who wanted to kill him the first time, suggested that David should now have him killed. David, however, rebuked him and declared that no man shall die or shall be put to death for Israel today. And David said that Israel has accepted him as their king. That's the most important thing. And then David turned to Shimei, "You shall not die for your actions." And it is interesting that we keep hearing this phrase, "What have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah?" Joab and Abishai had constantly been nagging at David to do things that were outside of what God was calling him to do. And what we should take from this is David is resolute in following the commands of God. And so instead of killing Shimei, David said that enough people in Israel has died. Remember, 20,000 Israelites died in the battle against Absalom. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 24 through verse 30. Now Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. And he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" And he answered, "My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, and that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all of my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I still to cry out any more to the king?" So the king said to him, "Why do you speak any more of this matter? I have said, you and Ziba divide the land." Then Mephibosheth said to the king, "Rather, let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house." The New King James Version says that Mephibosheth is the son of Saul. That is not incorrect, but a more correct interpretation is Mephibosheth is the grandson of Saul and the son of Jonathan. And David had a covenant with Jonathan, and after Jonathan's death, David sought out to find, was there anybody in the house of Saul that he could bless for the sake of Jonathan. And he discovered that Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth who was still alive, and David invited Mephibosheth to sit at his table and dine with the king. And when David left, obviously from our text now, we know that Mephibosheth was not with him. And so when he meets Mephibosheth, he asks him, why didn't you go with us? And Mephibosheth says to him, I was deceived. Now we remember that when David was leaving, Ziba went to David with supplies, and he told him that Mephibosheth never showed up. He said, I had prepared a donkey for him to ride, but he never showed up. And Mephibosheth realized that David had been good to him. Why would he turn against him? If you don't believe me, do whatever you think is best toward me. Mephibosheth said, David, you're like an angel of God. And David said, speak no more on the matter, meaning that David believed Mephibosheth. And David had said that the land be divided among Mephibosheth and Ziba. But Mephibosheth said, let him have all of the land, for it is far better for me knowing that the king has returned to Israel. Again, we see the character of David in these last two men, certainly Shimei. And I love it because people often talk about how could David be considered a man after God's own heart. Well, when we see his willingness to forgive Shimei and his acceptance of Mephibosheth's rationale for why he did not leave Jerusalem with David and his folks, we get a glimpse of the mercy that David offers to those around him. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 31 through 39. And Barzillai, the Gileadite, came down from Rogelim and went across the Jordan with the king to escort him across the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and he had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. And the king said to Barzillai, "Come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem." But Barzillai said to the king, "How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old. Can I discern between the good and the bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king. And why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant turn back away, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you." In David's exile, David finds a friend in Barzillai, a wealthy older man who provided for him. Now that David is returning to Jerusalem, he offers to bring Barzillai with him and to provide for him the rest of his days. Barzillai is grateful to David for the offer and the opportunity, but he says, let your servant return to his own home, that he may die in his own home and be buried in the tomb near his mother and his father. He suggests that David take Kimham, and some of the commentaries suggest that Kimham is a son or a grandson of Barzillai. And David does not, and Barzillai does not say to David, "Do for him what you would do for me." But he says, "Do for him what seems good to you." And when David had crossed the river, he kissed Barzillai and blessed him, letting him return home. It would not be right for us to read through these verses and not go back and understand that even though David is exiled from Jerusalem, the capital city, God still made a way for him, that he had provisions. 2 Samuel chapter 19, verses 40 through 43. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him. And all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to him, "Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan?" So all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, "Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense? Or has he given us any gift?" And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, "We have 10 shares in the king. Therefore, we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. So when David and the people come to Gilgal, the men of the tribes of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, are angered with the southern tribes, the tribes of Judah. They wonder why Judah alone sought to bring the king back and left them out. And Judah has a reasonable answer for them. Because David is of the household of Judah. And we are close kinsmen. And then Israel replies, but we have 10 shares in David. This is clearly saying that if you look at the total number of Israelites, the majority of them are with this divided notion of Israel versus Judah. Listen, we got 10 tribes, y'all only have 2. Now, had Judah been up to date on playing the dozen, they were like, yeah, but out of those 2 tribes, out of Bethlehem, Ephratah, the king of Israel comes, which makes him closer to us in blood. It's amazing because last night in our evening Bible study, we were talking about how when bickering and fighting happens inside the church, it has a way of affecting the overall community. And what this text does not bring out that we've already covered is the fact that Israel might have indeed been first to say, bring David back. But they were the first to say, get rid of David. And perhaps many of them desired that David would fall in the battle with Absalom. But remember that Gittai and Abishai and Joab spoke with David and said, you shall not go out into battle with us. And partly because they were going out to battle Absalom, his son. All right. Unfortunately, it happens. Absalom's beef with David goes all the way back to the rape of Tamar. We believe that Absalom was angered over the fact that David did nothing to Amnon. And that's not a fair thing to say because just because it's not recorded in the text, we don't know what David did to Amnon. Clearly, if he did something in Absalom's mind, it wasn't enough. And then after Absalom had Amnon killed, it was like you can't come right back. And it was a matter of years before Absalom was back in the city, um, and then once he was back, it was another 2 years before he uh, saw the king. So all of this time, this animosity between them two is building up to the point where Absalom then tries to take over for David. Now, on David's part, now David, David had a talk with the men, Abishai, Joab, and Gittai, and told them not to be harsh with Absalom. So he wanted the rebellion put down, but he didn't want his son killed. So yes, it is. It's a very difficult thing to deal with when there is animosity, even inside the family or inside the church. Oh, yeah. So I'm trying to figure out what happened. Sorry about that. It messed up all of my screens too. Give me a sec. Give me a second to get back to where I was. Okay. All right. Well, there are no other questions. Let's jump back into 2 Samuel chapter 20, and let's look at verses 1 and 2. And there happened to be there a rebel whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. And he blew a trumpet and said, "We have no share in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tent, O Israel." So every man of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah, from the Jordan as far as Jerusalem, remained loyal to their king. At the end of the other chapter, the men of Israel were saying, "Why did the men of Judah go out to bring David back by themselves and not include us?" And I don't know what the time delay is between the end of 2 Samuel chapter 19 and the beginning of 2 Samuel chapter 20. But it shows who their true color and true intention is. So the rift that we suggested in chapter 19 begins to manifest itself. And with the men of the tribe of Benjamin, Sheba uses the fact that David and his men had just come out of a conflict with Absalom. Even though they were victorious, it took its toll on them. And so Sheba declares that we have no share in David. It just said they had 10 shares in Israel, but now they are vowing that they, make sure I say this right, they said they had 10 shares in Israel, which made them closer to David. And now there arises this rebel Sheba who tells them that they have no shares in David. In other words, David is going to favor Judah. He further states that David doesn't come from any means. He's the son of Jesse. Jesse was a common man. Thus he calls for the Benjamites and all of Israel to leave the service of David. And each man went to his own tent. Each man of Israel. However, the men of Judah remained loyal to David. So that infighting about who's the closest to David, as that old saying is, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And Israel showed that they were connected to David, but not with David. While Judah is also connected and they are standing by David. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verse 3. Now David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house, and put them in seclusion and supported them, but did not go into them. So they were shut up to the day of their death, living in widowhood. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 19, I believe, is where the Lord said to David that the turmoil he caused in the house of Uriah would not depart from his house. God went on to say, what you did in private will be done in public. We know that the advice given to Absalom was to lie with his father's concubines. But he did not do this in private. He had a tent put up on the roof so that all will know exactly what Absalom was doing. And the 10 women who were violated, whom David left in charge of his house, were still there. And upon his return, David took them and put them in a hidden place. And he cared for them for what they suffered. And then it says in the New King James Version, but David did not go into them. In other words, David no longer had a sexual relationship with those women or his concubines. Because while Absalom uncovered his nakedness, David did not uncover Absalom's. Yes. 2 Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 4 and 5. And the king said to Amasa, assemble the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and be present here yourself. So Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah. But he delayed longer than the set time which David had appointed him. And David said to Abishai, oh, hold it right there, 4 and 5. So we learned that David's replacement, Amasa, is now captain of the army. And David says to him, assemble the men in 3 days. And Amasa, for some unknown reason, takes longer than the 3 days David had given him. As I looked around at the commentaries on these verses, the scholars seem to think that Amasa was in over his head. In the business world, there's this concept called the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle simply states that we rise to our level of incompetence. In other words, we keep going until we get a job that we absolutely don't even have a clue on how to do. And so these scholars suggest or believe that Amasa was in that position, but he did not have the background or the skills to do it. Now, Amasa was part of Absalom's army. A couple things about that, right? Now, David may have made him captain of the army to help bridge the gap between what was going on between Israel and Judah. Also, Amasa is David's nephew. So is Joab and Abishai. But whatever the case, he is not able to get the job done the way David wants it done. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 6 and 7. And David said to Abishai, now Sheba, the son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servant and pursue him, lest he finds himself fortified cities and escape us. So Joab men with the Cherethites and the Pelethites and all the mighty men went out after him. And when they went out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. Rightly so, David is frustrated with Amasa and his inability to get the army together. And so he commissions Abishai to lead the army against Sheba. We ought to understand that Abishai is not leading the entire army, but those valiant men who fought with David and who served as his personal guards. And among those is Abishai's brother, Joab. Joab is no longer the captain of the army. Amasa is. And Amasa has greatly displeased David with this thing. And now Abishai is acting as the captain of a piece of the army. But he brings Joab as one of his valiant men up with him. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 8 through 10. And when they were at the large stone which is in Gibeon, Amasa came before them. Now Joab was dressed in battle armor. On it was a belt with a sword fashioned in its sheath and at his hips. And as he was going forward, it fell out. Then Joab said to Amasa, "Are you in health, my brother?" And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. But Amasa did not notice the sword that was in Joab's hands, and he struck him with it in the stomach, and his entrails poured out on the ground, and he did not strike him again. Thus he died. Then Joab and Abishai his brother pursued Sheba, the son of Bichri. When Amasa finally showed up, Joab was there and dressed in full battle gear. Excuse me. He calls Amasa aside and asks, "Is it well with you, my brother? And are you okay?" And when he reaches out to grab Amasa to embrace him in a holy kiss, Amasa did not notice that Joab had a knife drawn. And then Joab struck him in the stomach. And all of his internal organs began to gush out. And he died. Then Abishai and the men pursued after Sheba. I can almost hear David saying, "What do I have to do with you sons of Zeruiah?" In these latest texts, the ones that we read today, Abishai wanted Shimei killed, and Joab killed Amasa. That's an interesting thing because, again, one of the things that I think of why David made Amasa captain of the guard was that it would bring the tribes of Israel and the men who fought with Absalom in compliance with Joab again acts rashly on his own volition. He strikes Amasa and he's bleeding out, laying on the ground. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 11 through 14. Meanwhile, one of Joab's men stood near Amasa and said, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, follow Joab." But Amasa wallowed in his blood in the middle of the highway. And when the man saw that all the people stood still, he moved Amasa from the highway to the field and threw a garment over him. When he saw that, everyone who came upon him halted. When he was removed from the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. And he went through all the fields of the tribe of Israel, Abel and Beth-Maachah, and the Berites. So they were gathered together and also went after Sheba. One of the men loyal to Joab noticed that Amasa was laying there in the street. He had not died yet, but as the men are coming by, they are startled by the sight of seeing him lying there in the street. And when this servant of Joab called for the men to come to battle, and they passed by this particular place in the street where Amasa was laying, it slowed them down. I mean, obviously, if you see someone lying there and all of their uh, inner parts are spilling out, you're trying to figure out what in the world happened. Um, so he had Amasa's body moved from the road to a nearby field. And not only did they move the body, they covered the body with a cloth or some material they covered the body with, so that not only would the people not hear Amasa, they wouldn't see him either. And the text tells us that then the people went on with Joab in pursuit of Sheba. Excuse me. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 15 through 22. Then they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Maacon, and they cast up a siege mound against the city, and it stood by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Hear, hear! Please say to Joab, 'Come nearby, that I may speak with you.' And when he had come near to her, the woman said, 'Are you Joab?' And he answered, 'I am.' Then she said to him, 'Hear the words of your maidservant.' And he answered, 'I'm listening.' So she spoke, saying, 'That you used to talk in former times, saying, they shall surely seek guidance at Abel. And so they would end disputes. I am among the peaceable and faithful in vessel. You seek to destroy a city and a member in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the God?' And Joab answered and said, 'Far be it from me, that I should swallow up or destroy. That that is not so. But a man from the mountains of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bichri by name, has raised his hands against the king, against David. Deliver him, and I will depart from the city.' So the woman said to Joab, 'Wait, watch. His head will be thrown to you over the wall.' And then the woman in her wisdom went to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it out to Joab. They blew a trumpet, and they withdrew from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. Joab and the men came to Beth Maacon and put a siege around this particular city. The men began to tear down the walls, trying to get to Sheba. One of the wise women of the city asked to speak to Joab. And she said to him, "Why is this city of God being set for destruction?" Joab's response to her is by saying, "We're not trying to destroy the city. We're simply trying to get the man who raised his hands against the king, namely Sheba. That's who we are looking for." And if you deliver him, Joab promises her that they will cause no harm to the city. And the woman told Joab, "Wait here." And as Joab is waiting there, the woman goes and discusses this matter with the people of Maacon. And they decide to throw the head of Sheba, which they had already severed, over the walls to David. And when David and his men saw it, they blew the trumpet. And Joab kept his word, and they did not do anything else to that particular city. And now, the end of verse 22 tells us that Joab returned to the king in Jerusalem. Joab was not exiled from Jerusalem, but given that relationship between Joab killing Absalom, it's doubtful that he was brought before the king. But right now we see that because Joab was essential in the putting down of the rebellion of Sheba, he's going to be in front of the king. 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 23 through verse 26. And Joab was over all the army of Israel. Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites. And Adoram was in charge of revenue. Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, was recorder. Sheba was scribe. Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. And Ira, the Jairite, was a chief minister under David. While the text does not specifically tell us of the reconciliation between David and Joab, and even to what level of degree it was, I thought about it. David never questioned Joab's ability to command the army. David, however, question was Joab's often wanting to run off and do things his own way. So when we read this in verses 23, that Joab was over all the army of Israel, it seems now that David has reinstated Joab as the captain of the guard. We don't know. I mean, is David still angry over Absalom? Is he still angry about Amasa? The text does not tell us. It simply tells us that Joab was over all the army of Israel. And then we are given a list of other leaders who serve in various capacities under David as the king. All right, that takes us through chapter 20. Any questions, comments on what we covered in chapter 20? It is getting toward the end of David's tenure. I'm going to do something right quick here. And well, yeah, that's an interesting thing. So David's around, if I'm looking at this correctly, David is around 70-ish years old. Just a young man, right? Well, yeah. So there are only 24 chapters in 2 Samuel. So near the end of 2 Samuel is where we're going to deal with the death of David. And I'm reading ahead. So for the purposes of next week, we are. I'll leave it up to you guys. The evening Bible study is definitely going to be impacted by Vacation Bible School. So it's up to you guys whether we do the morning Bible study. I'm game. So okay, then we will gather back together at. So next week we'll just be on a hiatus, and then we'll come back after Vacation Bible School. All right. I was scrolling ahead trying to. Let me do one last thing. We still have about 40 seconds. So 1 Kings chapter 2 is where we hear of the death of David. But before then, Solomon is going to be in charge of a good part of what's going on. All right, so we are going to be at 2 Samuel chapter 21, on verse 1. That's where I have us. All right, well, if nothing else, then we'll close out with 1. And I'm gonna we'll close out with prayer, and just remind everyone that we have our church conference tonight at 6:30. All right, eternal God, we thank you, magnify and glorify you for allowing us to have this study again. God, we ask now that you would lead us, guide us, and direct us, that you would continue to give us a desire to know your word, and that you would make it plain to us. And now, God, as we prepare to depart from this study, be with us and keep us. Bring us together again on our next session, and we'll be careful to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.